I have been just going after it every fucking day. I've been having like a rest day every 2 weeks. The first thing that she told me was to go on TRT. And I just want to leave this as a warning for everyone who's... Okay, let's go. All right, so I have been diagnosed with low testosterone this week. I got a blood test done because I suspected that something was off. And the results, I expected my thyroid to be the issue, and the results came back with 250 nanograms per deciliter total testosterone and about 8 picograms per milliliter free testosterone. 250 is the value that we're going to be focusing on. That is outside of the reference range of about 300 to 900 nanograms per deciliter for adult men my age. I'm 33, so that would be normal. So I'm slightly below the normal reference range. We're also going to be talking about why reference ranges are kind of a bad indicator. And there are people who are just fine with like the lower end of the spectrum, and there are people who do no better at the upper end of the spectrum, because there's a lot of other factors as well as how many androgen receptors a given person has, and like a lot of other lifestyle factors that factor in. But what is definitely true is that 250 nanograms per deciliter is a very small value, and it is small also for my general baseline. 5 years ago, before I did any of the crazy endurance shit that I have done since, I did get a baseline test that came out at around 460, 480 nanograms per deciliter, which is at the lower end, but like a little bit below the mean of the reference range, but it's perfectly fine. It's a perfectly good value. I didn't have any issues at the time. We're going to get into some of the symptoms that I've been experiencing and that led me to do another test. With that said, I want to implore every man and woman watching this to do a blood panel themselves, get the test done. So even if you don't have any of the symptoms we're going to be discussing, because you want to know if down the line you develop symptoms, what your baseline is. Because that now that I have that baseline, lets me know where like a normal set point for me should be. And beyond that, I will also be able to know when I'm in, let's say, a super optimized state where certain lifestyle modifications will help me get beyond like a normal, what would be a normal level. Although with one caveat, we're only talking about one measurement I did 5 years ago, so I should have probably got more comprehensive testing at the time, multiple measurements over multiple months, to get a proper picture of what good testosterone levels look like for me. And maybe even at the time I could have done simple lifestyle modifications to enhance even beyond that, to get better outcomes in terms of, you know, muscle gain, performance in sports, recovery, all of that stuff that comes with adequate and even high levels of testosterone. There's a reason why testosterone is used as a performance-enhancing drug in many sports, why it's illegal to do that, and why a lot of men, when they go on TRT, just start to get pretty fucking jacked, especially for their age. With that said, let's get into the symptoms, shall we? I got this graphic from the Men's Health Clinic. It's a good picture, an overview of the most common symptoms of low testosterone in men and women, although some of those things are quite obviously limited to men for reasons we're going to be discussing in a bit. We're looking at physical, psychological, cardiometabolic, and sexual symptoms. And I'm not going to go through each one of them, but I'm going to go through the 4 main pillars and discuss some of the most common things and what happened to me and what led me to think that I need more testing. So first of all, physical. Gynecomastia, that is the development of male breast tissue. So that's what a lot of, what steroid abuse can get you. Obesity, fat is a very endocrine active tissue. So a lot of excess body fat will mess with your hormones and it will make certain things and processes harder in your body. And gynecomastia is one of the things that can develop due to an excess of female sex steroid hormones. Decreased muscle mass and strength, that's basically what I've been looking at for the last year. So I have been doing a significant amount of endurance and cardiovascular training for a period of about 4 years, from 2020 to 2024, where I did a bunch of Ironman, countless marathons, half marathons, like on a weekly, even sometimes daily basis. Insane levels of cardio. And well, to no surprise, I didn't gain a lot of muscle in that time, even though I did some strength training. That is not what concerns me. What does concern me is that when I stopped doing the cardio and I went from like 90 minutes of cardio every day down to like a 30-minute session a week, and replaced that with a lot of gym work and intense gym work and high protein diet, I did not see the results that would be expected at that level of effort. That is the main issue that prompted me to do another test, because I was pretty sure something seems to be off. I also did have sleep disturbances. A lot of people tell you to just sleep more when you talk about hormone optimization, and just sleep more doesn't really cut it if you just can't sleep, or if you have trouble falling asleep, if you wake up in the night multiple times, or if you just wake up after like 6.5 hours and you're dead awake. And I've had that for the longest time over the last few years, where it's just not possible for me to sleep more than 7 hours, because my body will wake up no matter what time I go to bed, no matter what time I wake up, no matter my caffeine intake, which I've been experimenting with. I drink a lot of coffee, but even when I didn't, that's where sleep disturbances as a symptom of low testosterone can lead to like a spiral of testosterone just diminishing even more. Because you might have other causes for low T, then you get the sleep disturbances, and that lowers T even more. And then you might get obsessed about trying to sleep more, but things just don't work because you might not be addressing the root issue. That is also why hormone panels blood work is so important, because it tells you what's actually going on inside your body. And a lot of times those are things that are just not visible at the surface level, as we're going to see when I go through more of those issues. Osteoporosis, I did a DEXA scan, perfectly healthy bone density. I did not have any height loss. I have always been that height, so I don't have a lot to lose on that front. Psychological changes in mood, not really. For me, it's been more like a lowered amplitude in mood, so my moods have been less intense. In any case, psychological, not really any of those symptoms applying to me. Cardiometabolic as well, none of those really apply in any significant case. All right, so if we move on to psychological and cardiometabolic, both of those do not really apply to me. I've not had any of those symptoms. All right, now let's get to the more juicy stuff that most of you have probably been looking forward to hearing about. Sexual symptoms include infertility. I have no idea about that. I don't have any kids. I have never tried to have kids, and I've never get tested, which is something that I probably should put on my to-do list. Decreased sexual desire and activity. Maybe if compared to my 14-year-old self, who didn't think about anything else than that, but I would say that that's probably a good thing. In all other domains, that is not an issue. Any of the other things, if we're looking at those, not really any problems here. I would say decreased volume of ejaculate. Who measures that? I don't know. Maybe some of you guys can ask your girlfriends if they notice anything. I do not usually ask that. So, if anyone is suffering from ED, erectile dysfunction, this is an issue that is more common among men than most people would realize. It's also something that is highly stigmatized, which is why hardly anyone is ever willing to talk about that. You should get tested ASAP if you have that, because it is such a loss of quality of life if you just can't, make your tool work as it should. It will have an effect on your self-esteem, it will have an effect on your confidence, it will have an effect on so many areas of your life beyond anything that's listed here, if that is something you're fighting with. And that could also have many causes that are psychological and not hormonal in nature, but you should definitely get tested for that and not just hop into medication right away. All right, with that said, we are going to look at some of the population statistics and reference ranges. For example, how these ranges are even derived, who decides that 300 nanograms per deciliter is the lower bound of testosterone. If you're looking at this article from the same, the Men's Health Clinic UK, we have a nice graphic here about bell charts, a nice bell chart here called normal distribution, because it's the normal distribution of pretty much anything in society. The reference range is defined as the 95% of that distribution around the median. So anything, like in this case, if you look at this chart, there's the X, which is the median. 2 standard deviations in both sides covers 95% of the total population. And what clinics have done is they have tested hundreds of people, hundreds of men and women that are healthy, that are of a young reproductive age, and took their testosterone levels and then calculated the standard distributions and the values that apply to those. And that is how we get to 300 to 900 nanograms per deciliter. And if you look at that, you think about this, being inside the reference range, which in medical speak means being healthy, means that at the worst case, there's like 95% of the population that are closer to the average than you. Or if you talk about testosterone, which you might usually want to be a bit higher than the average, 97.5% have a higher testosterone level than you do if you're right at the lower end of the reference range, but you're still far from optimal. So what these reference ranges tell us, they don't tell us about optimal testosterone. They tell us about what's the borderline level of testosterone that we accept for people to just, not have severe debilitating issues. For example, in my case, being a little bit below the lower bound of the reference range and with the given symptoms, that is a almost asymptomatic clinical picture. But it stands to reason that if I had a closer to the median level of testosterone, I would probably still have a higher rating on all the other domains on that symptom chart. So if you want to be optimal, you want to be closer to, or ideally a little bit above, the median of that range. The median being 700 nanograms per deciliter. So that is actually what would probably be considerable as the optimal value for men in a young reproductive age. And that is what's going to be the target for myself to reach. Over the next weeks, I will be implementing a multitude of lifestyle enhancements that are geared to improve my testosterone levels as a first step back to the 460 to 500 range that I've been at a few years ago. And then beyond that, the goal will be to supercharge it to that optimal level. I expect from reports that I've been reading and forums that I've been going through, from people that are on TRT or people that had to fight with low testosterone and improved it, that there will be a multitude of enhancements in generally perceived well-being. A lot of people that improve their testosterone levels report that. And again, that is why I think even if you don't show any of the symptoms, you should get tested, because it will tell you about where you are and you will then be able to figure out for yourself where you could be. How did I even get this blood test done? So me just recently having moved to Dubai, I just did a Google search and asked some of the major AI models. And I came out with this healthcare provider called Sidra Healthcare. This is one of the healthcare providers here in Dubai, and they offer multiple services. One of them is the lab at home. And lab at home basically means that they send a nurse to your apartment or house to take blood from you, and then they will do a multitude of measurements. They offer diabetics profile, iron profile. They will analyze all sorts of like STDs, your liver, all sorts of stuff about your healthcare, and you can just get that. It takes 10 minutes. They show up, they take the blood, they take all the other samples they need, and they fuck off again. And within 24 hours, I got my results. And I basically just WhatsApped them, and I just told them kind of what hormones I wanted to look at, and they told me the price and gave me a rundown of everything that's included. I gave them a location, and it was as easy as that. I got my results via email 2 days later. That's how easy it was. Whole thing cost me like 230 euros. Let's take a look at the results. Here we've got free testosterone at 8.09 picograms per milliliter. So they give the reference range as starting at 12.3. So this is quite significantly below the reference range, although it is a very large reference range as well, which implies that there might be a lot of variance in this distribution, which also means that, being 50%, 30% below the reference range, it doesn't really mean a lot if it's just 10% of the upper end of the reference range. Measurement of free testosterone. All right, there we go. Cortisol, I also got that measured, 31.4. If it was in the morning, that's AM, that would be a pretty low level, but I got an evening read, which they give as 24.7 to 120. So this is in the reference range, although I've also read online that this is a rather high value for evening times, depending on how you look at that. So also from the conversation with my doctor, it appears that I do suffer from some level of increased stress, which, given my lifestyle, I am not surprised at all. All right, so here we're looking at the gonadotropins, including testosterone. And one of the interesting things is that their reference range starts at 175, which I highly doubt is a proper reference range. One of the things with the total T reference ranges over the last years is that they have been going down continually, mainly because testosterone levels population-wide have been decreasing a lot. There's multiple studies that show that over the last 50 to 70 years, testosterone on average throughout the healthy population has been decreasing by as much as 50% over the whole period. So what's healthy today is just borderline not low T 50 to 70 years ago, and definitely far from optimal. Just because it's healthy, it doesn't mean that it's the optimal value. Genetically, we're the same species as 70 years ago, so it stands to reason to assume that lower testosterone levels today have the same effect as they would have had on any given man 70 years ago. And testosterone also increases competitiveness. It decreases the likelihood to change one's opinions to appease other people. So if you have high testosterone, you're more likely to defend your own opinions. You can make of that what you will, but I think we see plenty of signs in society that people are afraid to speak out. And I think that might be related to lowering testosterone levels overall. In any case, what we're looking at here is a hormone picture that, according to my doctor, tells a story of secondary hypogonadism, which means secondary implies that there's a primary. Primary would mean that the testes aren't working as they're supposed to. Secondary hypogonadism means that the brain isn't sending the right signals to make more testosterone. That is usually psychologically stress-induced, and given my sports history and given these gonadotropins, it is highly likely that this low testosterone level is a product of OTS, overtraining syndrome. If we look further down, the other thyroid values, which are all very normal, although on the lower end as well of all the reference ranges. Thyroid stimulating hormone, which is the thing that just signals if the thyroid is working properly, so this is perfectly fine, but these two, T4 and T3, are on the lower end of the spectrum, which is also indicating a form of overtraining. So this whole picture paints a picture of OTS. The only other option would be a tumor in my pituitary gland, which is highly unlikely at this point. I did not have, there was another hormone that would be needed to exclude that conclusively. I didn't get that yet. I will get that probably if we don't get testosterone up with lifestyle measures, but as so far it looks all very straightforward. That is a very cohesive picture of the highest probability diagnosis being overtraining induced hypogonadism. It is produced by lifestyle choices. It will be remediated by lifestyle choices, and that is the plan that I will be going for over the next few weeks and months, and I'll be trying to post as regularly as I can about the updates. And the main things that I need to do right now to get over the, let's say, the first part of that, like the overtraining syndrome, is to rest. And it's not something I'm very much used to. Over the last 3 to 4 years, I have been just going after it every fucking day. I've been having like a rest day every 2 weeks. Even the other day, a friend sent me a message saying something like, "I'm very happy you're finally, taking a step back and you're finally taking a bit more chill." And just reading that, I had almost a visceral reaction to it. Like I don't like that. I don't like the image of chilling and taking a step back and not getting the fuck to work every fucking day. That also tells me a lot about the identity shift that is necessary to get this thing sorted, because I was putting a lot of my self-perception on my ability to work hard, and that will need to adapt to the new situation. And very curious how this is going to turn out, honestly. I got another hormone test scheduled a week from now, 2 weeks after the first one. We're going to be seeing how my first initial lifestyle changes will impact levels then. What I did is basically just got rid of all the coated kitchenware, all the soft plastic kitchenware, in favor of wood, glass, and steel materials. That is mainly for the purpose of eliminating the biggest sources of chemicals that can disrupt your endocrine system. And also I upped my calories, significantly increased my carbohydrate intake, and increased my rest periods as well. I think I've just been going to the gym twice this week. I haven't done that, I guess, in probably 5 years. So it's a very new phase of life for me. One more thing that I wanted to talk about. When I talked to the doctor, basically almost the first thing that she told me was to go on TRT. And I just want to leave this as a warning for everyone who's getting a testosterone test done and discovers hypogonadism. Do not give in to the temptation to jump onto TRT right away. TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, is a lifetime choice. You're replacing testosterone. So you're not enhancing your own endogenous testosterone. You are replacing it with testosterone produced in a lab, which means that your balls will go idle, you will become infertile, and you will have to stay on that thing for the rest of your life, most likely. It will be very hard to come off, especially if you've been on it for more than a few months, and you definitely don't want to take that risk. when there's lifestyle enhancements that you can take, and when there's other measures that you can go for. Honestly, if the only thing that stands between you and proper testosterone levels is a little bit of lifestyle discipline, I think that's a pretty fair and a pretty fair trade. I would go for that for sure. And also anyone who's taking any medication that might lower testosterone, like things that prevent hair loss, there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, your choice, but is it really worth it? Is a hairline really worth feeling like shit? Because that's what happens to a lot of people. And to quote one person that I found in an online forum who had a medical condition that caused him to have almost zero testosterone, when this gentleman went on TRT and finally got proper testosterone levels, and again, it was a medical condition, like his balls just didn't produce any, his gonads were idle basically, his primary hypogonadism. There was no way that he would fix that unless he took TRT. And he said that he didn't even know how bad he actually felt until he for the first time felt that good. So you don't know what you're missing out if you have been on low testosterone for too long. Just keep that in mind. All right, that's it for today. See you in the next video, and take care. Bye-bye.